Speaking of tweets, there's a famous tweet that says, Balaji was right might be the most terrifying phrase in the English language. And you were teaching a Bitcoin course pretty much before anybody talked about it. You predicted the exit of Silicon Valley and remote work pre-COVID. And then you predicted most of COVID's implications in January of 2020, which are probably three of the biggest trends that we've seen over the last decade.
Yeah.
Have you got a crystal ball? What's going on here?
Well, so what do I do? So, I mean, the thing is that it's a funny that statement. Like, I also predict a lot of good things, and I invest and bet on those things. But those everybody's kind of happy that I was right or whatever. Uh, for better or worse, you're seeing Slumdog Millionaire.
Yes.
Yeah, and so you know how he gets all the answers right, not because he like got the answers fed to him, or it was because like his life experience just managed to make him like well suited for the moment, right? And in some ways, like so I certainly have a mental model of the future. And as I said, like, my clothesline kind of things hang onto that, right? And you know, sometimes you have a productive mental model that just keeps chugging out result after result. It's kind of like how if you're good at math, you can do a lot of physics. Once you're good at math, you can be like, I can go into fluid mechanics, I can go into electrodynamics, I can go to astrophysics, I can start generating useful results, right? Similarly, you're good at computer science and stats, you can go into airlines, you can go into manufacturing, you can go into retail, you can give useful results because everything has algorithms and it has databases. So computer science is useful in the algorithms and stats is useful in the databases, right? Okay. So, how do I predict myself? Well, first is like the Slumdog Millionaire thing, the world is sort of just getting more Balaji-like, okay? What I mean by that is if you were, what's the opposite? The opposite is you're like a 1950s, like very conformist person that wants to wake up 9 to 5 each day and do exactly the same thing each day, that doesn't want any change and wants to work at the same job for 30 years. That's both nationalistic and socialistic, in a sense, right? Like you're a farmer slash soldier slash manufacturing slash physical in person kind of person. You don't care that much about the life of the mind. Your go team when it comes to sports. That's like your kind of stereotypical like 1950s ish kind of thing, right? Every aspect of that is getting inverted, right? So what do you have now? You have this mobile internet based, you have a very fluid day, you have high upside and you have high downside, you have far less certainty in everything and far less constraint in everything. You're in a time of flux, a time of change. You can code something and go vertical. You can get wrecked or go viral, right? The camera is shifting to Asia. Like all of these things superimposed is this bizarre kind of thing where it's like, okay, I've just now sort of accepted that anything that I'm into today will in 5 years or 10 years become much, much, much more popular. Okay, example. This is a small example, but like, Chris Dixon has also said this. It's like whatever, quote, nerds are into on the weekend, everybody cares about it in 10 years, right? For example, Palm Pilots in the late 90s, everybody's using iPhones 10 years later, right? World of Warcraft, well, Oculus is pretty big now, and I think VR will eventually get pretty big. Netscape Navigator, people were on the internet in the early, 80s and the web in the early 90s. Everybody's on the web today. Social media, it was like Facebook and Twitter was among like the San Francisco literati, technorati, and then everybody's on it, right? And so cryptocurrency is another version of that. Like for a less high-profile version, from 2005 to 2007, Google Maps existed, but the iPhone didn't. So what's the kind of thing I did? I had my laptop and I would look up directions on Google Maps and it'd screenshot the turn by turn, and then I'd have the laptop on the passenger seat as like a mobile. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I mean, of course, I'd pull over at times or whatever to look, but of course, that's a preview of Google Maps on the iPhone, right? So whenever I'm kind of hacking together something like that now, I know that's an investable opportunity.
Because
right?
that is a problem which is yet to be solved, which you can kind of jerry rig into a solution, which means that downstream it's going to be made into a much more cohesive
Productized.
solution. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So what kind of stuff is that today, right? So digital nomadism, right? A full crypto life where you're basically crypto first on things, and like your bank account is like your crypto wallet, and other bank accounts are like kind of downstream of that. Um, Obviously, like so much crypto stuff. I couldn't even go into all of them, but like from crypto credentials to crypto social networks to ENS names, all of that type of stuff will be huge. ENS just passed like 2 million names and thereabouts. All the AI stuff, especially AI content creation. So AI audio, like synthesis engines will succeed search engines. So do you know what I mean by that?
No.
Okay, so have you heard of DALL-E?
Yes.
Okay, so the difference between I made this point on Twitter, but like if you type a query into Google, you're optimized for making a very short, often a single word query, and you go to Google Images, right? Whereas with DALL-E, you type out this long, involved sentence with lots of clauses and modifiers and whatnot, and you get a better result as a function of that.
You're
right?
optimizing for precision on the DALL-E as opposed to brevity on Google.
Yeah, and so essentially, basically, you're like people have been trained in how to search, and they have to be just completely. Synthesis engines have the opposite instincts from search engines, right? And the the way of thinking about that is here. I'm going to give this tweet that you can. So if you take a look at the left image there, see it says Docker. Google Images, and you see a little whale with the stuff on it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the right image, it's blue whale with stacks of shipping containers on its back, CG Society, ArtStation trending 4K, and you get something very different. Right? Much more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And now that is the difference between a search engine and a synthesis engine. Like prompt engineering is just on the total opposite extreme of like a extremely long, detailed sentence. One word just never works. Whereas with search, one word is really kind of what you want to reduce it to, right? So people have to completely retrain to think about synthesis engines, because it's not just going to be synthesis of images, it's going to be synthesis of audio, video, code, like longer pieces of text, maybe full video games, maybe full apps even, right? Synthesis engines are going to be absolutely massive. And the right keywords unlock them. It's like open sesame, like we're entering like a world of magic where if you know lots of words, okay, for example, if you look at this one, CG Society ArtStation, what the heck is that? Oh, that's a specific like 3D graphics community. And by adding those there, the algorithm knows now to make it look like the kinds of things that are generated by that. Okay. And 4K, right? So knowing obscure bits of art history, that's now an applied subject. Okay. You can say, do it in the style of Picasso and do it in the style of Monet and do it in the style of Rembrandt, and you'll get different looking images as a function of that. The exact same. So here's another one that I had on exactly that, right? So now, of course, I used to be at the cutting edge of ML/AI. That was like 10 years ago. I'm not as into the subject as I was, but I'm getting back in. It's funny, like because I was doing computational genomics for many years. But now what's going to happen is from a content creation standpoint, all this stuff is now working. So synthesis engines, it's not just obviously me that's using them. It's a bunch of other people that are using them, a bunch of other people who developed them. That is something where pretty much anything you can describe with a few sentences, like DALL-E shows that there's like the limit on that is much higher than we thought, right? It breaks through beyond what we thought was possible, right? Natural language is now a programming language, right? So that's so I mentioned what are the pieces of the future that are being lived today, right? So I mentioned digital nomadism, I mentioned crypto everything, I mentioned synthesis engines. I think also the shift of the camera to Asia is pretty important. The level up of India, that's this is something I tweet about, but one of the most underpriced things in the world, like in the sense of just nobody's budgeted for it, there's no news articles about it, nobody knows to expect it, is 1 billion Indians have gotten online with some of the cheapest, internet service in the world. And that means that the plurality, if not the majority of English speakers online will be Indian by 2030.